On behalf of the faculty and staff at East Tennessee State University, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2016 State of the University Address. In keeping with the direction that we utilized last fall, this morning's presentation will be data intensive. This morning I will provide an overview of major data points impacting the institution and comparisons of those data points at an institutional, state, regional, and national level, with an accent on peers. I'm going to talk some about our budget, both current year as well as future trends for the budget. Given the advent of the FOCUS Act and the pending arrival of our Board of Trustees, I'm going to talk some about FOCUS and its implications for the university. I'm going to provide an update on major campus construction projects, and then we'll close with a conversation of the institutional strategic planning efforts that are being led by Dr. Hoff and Dr. Dixon. But I want to begin with an overview of enrollment statistics with a focus on student access and success. The chart behind me provides a depiction of overall enrollment in the public university and community colleges across the state of Tennessee. You see, going back at the starting point in time of 2005, a significant increase in enrollment as a result of individuals going back to college during the recession, and then a following decline in enrollment both at the universities as well as the community colleges in terms of headcount and FTE. Within that overall picture, the chart here, and I apologize if the granularity is not as sharp as it should be, all the slides will be posted to the web upon conclusion of this morning's presentation, but the slide here depicts full-time to part-time ratios within the universities across the state of Tennessee. You see at ETSU, the predominance of our students are enrolled as full-time students, and we look similar to most of the institutions in the state, minus TSU and the University of Memphis, both of whom have a larger concentration of part-time students. If you could see this chart, what it shows is overall enrollment across the state last year. And the items there with the circle around it, the 14.7 and the 38.6. The 14.7 is the percent of students of color who are enrolled at the university, among the lowest in the state. And the 38.6 is the percent of our undergraduate population who is Pell eligible. That number is also among the lowest within the Board of Regents system. So the reason why I put this chart up is because it dispels a myth. One of the myths of our university is that the majority of our students are Pell eligible. As you can see here, the majority of our students are not Pell eligible, and our Pell distribution is at the bottom end of every institution in the Board of Regents system. Only the University of Tennessee at Knoxville has a lower concentration of Pell eligible students than ETSU. Everyone's aware of Tennessee Promise. Tennessee Promise was the major public policy initiative in higher education in 2015-16. It has changed the enrollment landscape in the state of Tennessee. Last fall, almost 16,300 students enrolled in the community colleges, or TCATs, taking advantage of the opportunities afforded through Tennessee Promise. Tennessee Promise has been successful in moving the number of individuals going to college. This chart shows our college-going rate in the state of Tennessee prior to Promise. You can see we're right below the national average. After Promise, look how big of a jump we made. 4,000 new entrants to the state's post-secondary system, the largest single-year increase in a college-going rate in the entire time that these numbers have been measured. You see here in this chart the distribution of those students across the post-secondary system in the state of Tennessee. The uptick represents those students enrolling in the public sector. The uptick at the bottom shows the representation of those students in the community colleges. So the enrollment growth has been driven to the community colleges and the TCATs. Also reflected here, enrollment increases in the community colleges, enrollment decreases across the institutions. So what's been the impact on the universities? Here's the data for this fall. So this is fall data for the Board of Regents system. You can see that from 2010 to 2016, downward trend lines at almost every single institution in the TBR system. And then here is census data for the system as a whole. You see minus Austin Peay, and the note on Austin Peay is they're eligible to receive Promise scholarships because they offer associate's degrees. And then the University of Memphis, the majority of the institutions experienced enrollment declines. and also significant declines in the community college sector. The moral of the story here is there's a significant amount of variability in the state's enrollment landscape. This is year 2 of promise. It will take at least another year for the variables to settle and for us to get a true sense of the impact of promise on the college choice decisions that are being made across the state. But for those of you in the audience who think if we can just wait one more year, next year the transfers from promise will arise and it will balance out our enrollment, my anticipation is that that hope is misplaced. If you look at the numbers of enrollment growth, 4,000 new students in terms of the college going rate, of those about half went to the community colleges, half went to the TCATs. In a few minutes, I'll show you retention and persistence rates. So of those 2,000 students who went to the community college, half of them will return as sophomores. Of that half, about 2/3 will transfer. So from Mountain City to Memphis, you're now talking about less than 1,000 students. The ability for our university to change these numbers is not predicated on waiting for students to transfer. The ability of our university to change these numbers is predicated on institution initiatives that are disruptive. And that's going to be a theme that I'm going to stress throughout today. Promise has changed the enrollment dynamic across the state, but our ability to control our institutional enrollment dynamic is predicated on our programs, our services, and the environment that we create for our students here. But as you look at this data, when you get back to your offices on your computer, I would draw your attention to Nashville State, down 1,100 students in a single year in the fastest growing metropolitan area in our state and one of the fastest growing metro areas in the nation. And then also to Southwest Tennessee Community College. For those of you who are students of history and higher education in the state of Tennessee, would encourage you to go back and look at enrollment numbers from the 80s for State Tech Institute at Memphis and Shelby State. There are fewer students enrolled at the combined institution now than there was at STEM alone in the late 1980s. So major changes are occurring across the landscape of higher education in the state of Tennessee is the takeaway from this enrollment data. Here's enrollment information for East Tennessee State University for the fall. Fall in context to other falls going back to 2012. You'll notice that across the board, the number of freshmen have diminished, sophomores, juniors have held constant, seniors as well. I want to draw your attention to the graduate chart, total GR. This is the largest class of graduate students we've had in the history of the university. So as you look to changes that are occurring across the country, one of the changes that's occurring here, and you see it nationally in the post-secondary sector, is a focus on graduate education. And I think we have opportunities as a university to continue to grow graduate programs because of the health sciences mission of the institution. This chart shows enrollment by county. You'll see that across the board, up top, those are Tennessee counties, enrollment declines in almost every county minus one. Sevier. Why is enrollment up in Sevier County? Because of the leadership of Dr. Osborne and the new location that we have opened in Sevier County. In Sevier County, students can take advantage of Tennessee Promise, take the first 2 years of college at Walter State at no cost, and then enroll at ETSU. Local scholarships will cover the final 2 years of tuition and fees. So if you track these Sevier County numbers into the future, I think you'll see continued growth at ETSU for students from Sevier County. If you look at the bottom portion, you'll see at the bottom portion of the slide, this is where we've offset the impacts of Promise. We've grown in student enrollment from out of state. We've grown in student enrollment from the border counties. But where we've grown significantly is in international students. 396 international students in 2012, 646 international students this fall. If international were a county, it would be the number 6 county in the state in terms of students who transition to East Tennessee State University. With respect to race and gender, you see here on the chart behind me the statistics with respect to race as well as to gender. I want to drill down on our freshman class because when we focus on recruitment, and we've talked a lot about recruitment on our campus, there are many in the room who have been actively engaged in our recruitment efforts over the course of the past couple of years. You can see here that our number of freshmen is down slightly over last fall, but for all intents and purposes, we've held our own. So in the face of Tennessee Promise, while our freshman class is smaller than it was prior to Promise, we've held our own, all things considered. What we've done, however, is to change the composition of that freshman class. The average GPA of the freshman class this fall is a 3.5. and the average ACT score is a 23.2. Using those two data points as proxies for academic preparation, this is the best prepared class of freshmen in the history of the university. And if things hold constant, our retention rates should improve and the graduation rate should improve. So for the 5 years that I've had the honor to serve as your president, individuals have approached me about increasing our admission standards. You see here by our admission standards holding constant and us holding constant to our access mission, programs, distribution of policies, and elements related to college choice have changed our undergraduate population, even though our admission standards have remained constant. A reflection of the quality of our freshman class is also exemplified by the number of students who are receiving academic performance scholarships. We made some significant investments in APS scholarships last year, and we've recruited heavily. I want to thank those of you who have participated in the top scholar events, to Dr. Ramona Williams, to Brian Henley and their staff, to the deans. We have an event tonight. There'll be, at a minimum, 80 students at Shelbridge this evening, and we provide them with an opportunity to learn about the academic quality of our university. Those initiatives have worked. We've been aggressive, and our aggressive initiatives to grow and diversify our enrollment portfolio have been successful, and you see that reflected here in the number of students, high-achieving students at the presidential and provost level. These are 29, 30, 31, 32 ACT scores, and we've moved from 370 freshmen in this portfolio 3 years ago to 570 freshmen in this portfolio for the current fall. I've alluded to some of the changes in the enrollment landscape, but in the second bullet, I'd like to draw your attention to the North Carolina version of Promise. We've recruited extensively in Western North Carolina. Next fall, students can attend Western Carolina University for about $1,000 a year. North Carolina has initiated their version of Promise, but they're investing in select universities across the state, from the Piedmont to the mountains. And we're going to have to once again examine our recruitment strategies. The moral of the story here is that the landscape around us is fluid, and it will remain that way. The market is hyper-competitive. If you drive from Nashville to Memphis and count the number of college billboards along the interstate, if you had $1 for every one of those college billboards, you could probably buy yourself a really nice dinner at a fancy steakhouse in Nashville. We're an institution that is building our enrollment strategy grassroots. We're visiting high schools, we're meeting with counselors, we're welcoming students to our campus. We're not investing heavily in flashy marketing campaigns because I think the trust that is being established among students, parents, and high school counselors is something that will be a little bit more permanent. However, if we are to reverse our trend lines, I've referenced disruption. We need to examine disruption in terms of new online programs, disruption in terms of new programs on campus, disruption in terms of our process. There are certain elements of our process that this fall just didn't work the way they should. If you saw the lines outside of financial aid, those lines were a representation of broader structural challenges across the campus, and I'll talk some about initiatives that we'll launch this year to examine our processes across campus. I want to talk a little bit about retention and graduation rates, the other part of the access and success portion of this segment of the presentation. If you could see the chart behind me, it's retention rates, start at ETSU, retained at any institution in the state. This is start at ETSU, return to ETSU. About 71% of the freshman class will return to ETSU the following fall. Now, mind you, this fall is the best prepared class we've had in the history of the university, and I anticipate that these numbers will move. Graduation rates. The slide behind me shows graduation rates across the South, and the reason I'm showing this is to demonstrate that over time, how hard it is to move these numbers. An improvement in a graduation rate is not reflected immediately. The enhanced academic preparation of this freshman class, the interventions that we're making in terms of degree works, et cetera, the increased number of professional advisors on campus, a lot of the high-touch activities that we implemented last year, those will not be reflected in our data for 5 more years. So as we look at graduation numbers, we all must be patient and be mindful that the investments we're making today will not demonstrate themselves for 4 to 5 more years in terms of how the state and external entities view us. So you can see from 2008 to 2013, state of Tennessee, our graduation rates improved right at 2%. Here's graduation numbers for the university as a whole. These are THEC data, so students who start at ETSU and graduate from any public university in the state of Tennessee. That number's right at 52%. I draw your attention on this slide to the column for African American students. Later in the presentation, I'm going to talk about some diversity initiatives at the institution. They're diversity initiatives that are not a result of things that occurred on our campus last week. They're diversity initiatives that have been in the works for 4 or 5 months, and they're diversity initiatives, the urgency of which are exemplified in the data. We have the lowest graduation rate for African American students of any university in the state of Tennessee. We must move these numbers. Here's the graduation rates for students who start at ETSU and finish at ETSU. So about a 10% drop. Start at ETSU, finish at ETSU is 40%. Start at ETSU, finish anywhere in the state of Tennessee is 52%. This chart is very busy, but I encourage you to look at this when you get back to your offices. Through the work of Dr. Mike Hoff, we've been able to match our student enrollment data against the National Student Loan Clearinghouse database. This allows us to see what happens to students at ETSU and where they graduate at an institution outside of the borders of the state of Tennessee. There are some things here that are interesting. The first is that students who are enrolled full-time at our institution, 62% of them graduate from ETSU. We've made a lot of effort and emphasis on 15 to finish, on-campus residency, meal plans, the total university experience. These data demonstrate the power of those investments. Students who come to our institution, get engaged, get involved, live on campus, take a full-time course load, 62% of those students graduate from ETSU. It's the other students, the bulk, that are adjusting those numbers. But another thing to point to here, and it's a number that Dr. Hoff refers to as our divorce rate. About 12% of our students graduate from somewhere else. Once again, this to me is reflective of the fact that it's not the admission standards, it's not the quality of our freshmen, it's something about the experience. Because if you look at our freshmen as a whole, for those who enrolled exclusively part-time, full-time, 72% of those students graduate. So the onus is on us as a university to assess our processes, to assess our interventions, to assess the in-classroom experience, and determine what all of us can do to help to move these numbers. I now want to shift to an overview of finance and affordability, talk some about our budgets, where our revenues are derived, and where our expenses are invested. National budget landscape, similar to the enrollment landscape. It's fluid. And if you look at the final bullet in 2017, the closure rate of small colleges may triple that of the past decade, according to Moody's. Within the state of Tennessee, we are fortunate in that our tax revenues this past year have been positive, and forecasts for the next couple of years remain positive. We are one of a handful of states that are investing in post-secondary education, but the manner in which those investments are made have changed from the manner in which they were provided a decade ago. A decade ago, we had a funding formula that was enrollment-driven. Now our funding dynamics are predicated on outcomes. But whether it was an enrollment formula or an outcome formula, the overall percent of the operating dollars needed to run our university and universities across the state, provided by the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee, has declined. This is a chart I've shared with you in the past. The SREB is the Southern Regional Education Board, the states of the Southeast. You can see that at the beginning of the 2000s, about 60 cents on the dollar of what it took to run a public university was provided by the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee. By the middle of this decade, that number was less than 40%. Here's that data for the universities within the state of Tennessee. Going back to 1987, 1988. 1987, I was a sophomore at West Virginia University. D.P. Culp was the president of ETSU. At that point, Dr. Culp and his administration had about $15,000 per student to keep the lights on. Now fast forward to this following fall, we've got a similar amount of revenue per student to keep the lights on. But the revenue sources that comprise that total bar have changed. The blue are state appropriations, the yellow is tuition and fees. Those 3 years in the interval with the red, that's ERA dollars, those are stimulus funds. But once again, the takeaway is the manner in which institutions are supported has changed, but the overall revenue that we have per student to run our universities has remained relatively constant for almost 30 years. So I'm going to share slides with you on tuition and fees, et cetera. The general public perception is that institutions have increased price. The cost of college has increased. Tuition has increased, but the cost per student to run our universities, as you see here, has remained relatively constant. Now let's go back to 87, 88. The internet didn't exist. None of this technology existed. We've infused technology into every classroom. We've moved courses into an online setting. There's the expectation among students and faculty that you could sit in Borchuk Plaza and have spotless wireless access. We do because of the leadership of Karen King and her staff. But in 87, 88, none of that existed. I would contend as a sector, as an industry, we've been extremely efficient and cost sensitive because we've infused technology without really changing the bottom line per student. Total dollars invested across the state of Tennessee. Here's the outcomes formula that I referenced earlier. These are the variables upon which the state of Tennessee assesses our performance. Student progression through credit hour benchmarks, degrees produced, research funding. What's interesting to note is that while the formula is predicated on outcomes, what drives the outcomes? Enrollment. So if you're going to increase student progression through a pipeline, you have to grow your enrollment. So while the formula does not recognize enrollment per se, without enrollment growth, it's difficult to hit the outcomes measures that are contained within the formula. Here's our formula distribution and the distribution of points across those criteria for the past few years. Here's a slide that I pulled from THEC, and I want to spend a second on this because it was in THEC's fact book. This slide demonstrates the change in the manner in which the state is assessing our outcomes. It looks very similar to the overall operating dollars per FTE, but this is total support per award. An award is a graduate. You can see that at the beginning of that time threshold, once again, 87, 88, it cost about $80,000, that state investment and student investment, to produce a graduate. Now those numbers have dropped to well below 70. Once again, a sign of efficiency, but also reflective of the manner in which the state is changing their descriptive terms, no longer describing investments per student, but investments per graduate. Tuition and fees, the blue line is peers, the yellow line is East Tennessee State University. And here's our tuition and fees compared to those peers. We're right in the middle of the pack. So these are our institutional peers from Central Michigan all the way down to Florida Atlantic, Marshall, et cetera, in the middle. We remain right about the peer average in terms of tuition and fees. And here's tuition and fees compared to the state of Tennessee. I do not have the information for the UT system. The University of Tennessee at Martin has adopted the tuition structure that UT Knoxville has implemented, and I'm not able to make everything add up. The moral of the story is we are a little bit more expensive in comparison to Board of Regents institutions than we were 3-4 years ago, but we remain below the University of Memphis in terms of total tuition and fees. But when you look at the Knoxville number and look at Martin, because I think that's the way the UT system is headed, they've moved the payment structure from 12 hours to 15 hours, which means that the tuition and fee level charged to students moves from about $8,500 to about $11,500 because you're charging for a 15-hour base instead of a 12. That's not something we've discussed yet at ETSU, but I do anticipate that with the arrival of our Board of Trustees, it's something that we need to research in the out years. How does this come together? Tuition and fees encapsulate about 70%, depending upon the year, 75% of our overall revenue. Our investments are in people. 70% of our expenditures are in the faculty and staff who comprise the heart and soul of our university. It's no secret that our salaries trail peer averages. Here are our salaries for staff in comparison to the peer benchmark, and here are our salaries for staff in comparison to every single peer, 20th out of 20 institutions. Similar data for faculty, comparison against the benchmark, 19 out of 20 institutions. My favorite university, Marshall, last. For those of you who know me, that's a joke, but you see our faculty salaries are not where they should be. There are a number of reasons why, and we've got to continue the investigation of the causes. Part of the cause for this, I'm beginning to sense, is that our distribution of faculty and staff to student looks a little bit different than our peers. But also what you see as a university is we have 1,100 fewer students than we did a decade ago, but the number of faculty and staff has remained constant. And if you compare our loads and our ratios to peer institutions, what you see is that, and I'm using full professor here because it's the most stable element of the institution, number of full professors and student FTE per instructional FTE, you see we're at 15.4, and some of our peer institutions look very different. So the moral of this slide is as follows. As a university, our ability to move faculty and staff salaries is predicated on growth. If we grow the university, and we'll talk about enrollment growth goals in a little bit, that revenue provides an opportunity for us to move these numbers. If we do not grow the university, then we've got to have another series of conversations across the institution. Here's our student to faculty staff ratios, 19:1. Here's our student and faculty staff ratios across distributions of courses. One of the points of pride of the university, it's something I talk about all the time with incoming freshmen and prospective high school students. Small student to faculty ratios, 13.8 at the upper division level. At the freshman and sophomore level, 26:1. So small classrooms, opportunities for students at the undergraduate level as freshmen to learn and to work with tenured full-time faculty members. Our budget. Here's revenue by source. The bulk of our revenue comes from tuition and fees. This year, or this past year, 24% of our total dollars at the university came from the state of Tennessee. So the bulk of our revenue comes from sources outside of the state. Within the mandatory tuition and fees, you can see here where those revenues are derived, in-state, out-of-state, debt service, etc. And then here's non-mandatory fees. The bulk of those are course fees, materials fees, and RDP. In terms of our expenditures, our primary investment from an expenditure perspective is in our people. And across those natural classes, you see the investments in salaries, etc. 70% of the expenditures of our campus, just as with almost any major research university in the nation, are in faculty and staff. I want to switch a little bit and talk some about perception. Over the course of the past year, we have worked in conjunction with Modern Think, the entity that does the Great Colleges to Work For survey, to really look under the hood at student and faculty and staff perceptions of the university. I presented some of this data to you last year at the recommendation of the Faculty Senate. We sampled every single faculty and staff member across the university. We had a 30% response rate, and you can see how the response rate is distributed across the various classifications of employees. And you see the definition of terms at the top. This is a reference slide for when you go back and review this material at your leisure. The takeaways for me, 72% of the people who responded to the survey were satisfied with their jobs and the level of support that we received from ETSU. 63% of the respondents felt that we have an appropriate emphasis on our mission. 83% have a good relationship with their supervisor or department chair. 54% of the respondents felt that we have a strong sense of shared governance, and 71% of the respondents were proud of the university and our mission. But now let's compare those numbers over time and to a peer benchmark. So this is job satisfaction, and this upward trend is going to be reflected in every single slide. Each year that we've provided the survey, the responses have been much more positive towards an individual's reflection of their experience at ETSU. But we're not yet where we want to be in terms of the benchmark. We're not identified by this group as a great college to work for, even though I think we're a wonderful place to call home and a great college to work for. But that's just my opinion. I know how I scored the survey. Job satisfaction, 72% of the folks are satisfied with their positions. Teaching environment, we've got some work to do here. We've made improvements, but you can see the number here in terms of the balance of teaching research and the service mission of the university, and that teaching is appropriately recognized. I'm going to talk some about an initiative that Dr. Bach has led, focused on the teaching and instructional mission of the university as something to help move these data points. Professional development, look at the significant increases in terms of response rates, the manner in which individuals view professional development at the university. I think we make some significant investments in PD, and you see that reflected here, very close to the benchmark. Compensation, we know compensation would be an issue, but compensation is an issue across higher education. Facilities, once again, something that you'll see later in the presentation where we as a university are making investments. Policies, communication. The communication number, when I first saw the 54, it was troubling because we've made aggressive steps. I've made aggressive steps to try to improve communication across campus. I've joked with my wife, however, when I saw these numbers, and Donna, thanks for being here this morning, and thanks for what you do for the university. From welcoming students to our home on Saturday to speaking to a parent group on Sunday, thanks for the things that you're doing to help be a part of this story as well. But I said to Donna, some days I feel like I'm in a parking lot with a megaphone communicating to no one. Because we've tried hard, but this is rated at 54%. But then when you throw the benchmark at 60, this is a problem everywhere. My hope is that we can be identified as a best practice institution based on some of the things we're doing with the IUC and shared governance across campus. And then here's the overall comparison by job classification and job category. Now let's talk about student perceptions. So on the faculty side, to wrap that up, great colleges to work for, at the recommendation of the faculty, we sampled every single faculty and staff member across campus, 30% response rate, and you saw areas in which we've made some progress and areas in which we still have work to do. The NESE data is a similar examination of individuals' perspectives and reflections on our institution, but this is provided to students, the National Survey of Student Engagement, led by George Koo at the University of Indiana. What this survey found, this is new data, it's not been presented yet to the campus. I asked Dr. Hoff for it yesterday, and he goes, Dr. Noland, I don't have it yet. And I go, well, I want it. So this hasn't had a chance to go out yet, but you're getting an early glimpse. Academic Council and others will have a chance to unpack all of the numbers. But this, to me, is a powerful series of 5 data points. First data point, 78% of the students evaluated their educational experience at ETSU as good and excellent. Seniors, 83%, above the peer average. 87% of our students said if they would start college all over again, they'd come here. 88% for seniors, also above our peer average. Significantly above the peer average in terms of the quality of work provided by our advisors. Above the peer average with respect to the quality of the interactions with faculty. Also above the peer average in terms of intentional efforts that we've made as an institution to encourage students to engage in diverse and inclusive settings. So sometimes our instinct and intuition is wrong. We've talked at length at senior leadership levels about challenges that students face along the pipeline and that our students aren't satisfied with their experience. I made a reference earlier to a divorce rate. These data, once again, dispel a myth. I dispelled a myth earlier on Pell representation. These data dispel a myth. 88% of our seniors, if they had it to do all over again, would come here. And our students are above the peer average with respect to their reflections on their interactions with advisors, with faculty, and with staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing outstanding work at the institution, and it's time that we pat one another on the shoulder and say, job well done, now let's get back to work. That work is also reflected in external perceptions. This is an outstanding university with academic programs recognized for excellence at a national level. Top 20 pre-med school in the nation. Top 50 program for digital animation and game design in the South. Number 2 in the nation for our online nursing program. Number 14 in the nation physical therapy program. Number 1 computer science program in the state of Tennessee. Not in Knoxville, not at Vanderbilt, but here. Students recognize our academic programs of distinction. That's one of the reasons why you're seeing the profile of our student body change. It's time that all of us begin to look at our university differently. This is not the ETSU of 2000. This is an institution recognized nationally for academic excellence. It's an institution recognized nationally for its focus on the health sciences. And it's an institution that's drawing students from all across the state and all across the nation to come here for the quality of instruction and the opportunities for undergraduate research that occur on a daily basis. I know that, you know that, and these rankings represent the fact that the nation sees it as well. But while we may be changing who we are as a university, we're not changing what we stand for, we're not changing our mission, and there are no changes at all in what this institution does for the region. Every time I have the opportunity to stand before a group and tell your story, I start as follows. East Tennessee State was founded in 1911 for a singular purpose, to improve the quality of life for the people of Central Appalachia and East Tennessee. That link to mission is reflected in the Great Colleges to Workforce Survey. Our faculty and staff recognize and appreciate how your roles link to that mission. But where that mission really comes to bear is in our stewardship of place. We make a difference in the lives of people of this region in ways that are hard to quantify, but in ways that are meaningful. And I have 3 slides here that demonstrate the things that we do to make a difference in the lives of the people of this region. I could have 30 slides, but these are simply 3 slides that touch the high points. One high point: before our students ever take a class in preview, they volunteer in the community. Every single athletic program, every single student athlete volunteered in the community in 2015-16. You see the patient encounters. We're the healthcare infrastructure and safety net for the people of this region. More than 329,000 patient encounters in our clinics, $1 million in uncompensated care. You see the work that our students have done, $326,000 that our students have raised for charitable causes across the region. 210 arts events. We're the cultural hub of East Tennessee and Central Appalachia, and we're engaged in cutting-edge research to make a difference. There was a bullet point on the first stewardship of place side. It was a bullet point related to the work of Dr. Rob Pack and his faculty colleagues. Over the course of 2016, there's been a lot of public coverage about the work that we're doing to address the opioid epidemic. I'm confident that in 3 to 5 to 10 years, the temper will diminish, and folks will see what we're trying to do as an institution is serve our mission. We're a region that's struggling. More people in East Tennessee die from drug overdoses than car crashes. We have a mission responsibility as a university to make a difference, and that's what Dr. Pack and his colleagues are doing in conjunction with our partners at Mountain States through the Opioid Center and the Center of Excellence that will open in Gray. I want to transition to what is almost the close of the presentation, and I thank you all for hanging with me. I know that there's a lot of material here, but I would like to provide an update on focus, construction projects, and then strategic planning. The Focus Act represents a paradigm shift in terms of the governance of higher education in the state of Tennessee. For the first time in the 105-year history of this nation, we will have an institutional board of trustees. No longer will we look to Nashville for approval of tenure and promotion. No longer will we look to Nashville for approval of policies. We will be governed by an institutional board of trustees. And behind me are the purposes, the services, and the functions of that local board from a responsibility perspective. But what does the act mean for East Tennessee State University, and what are we doing to prepare for the implementation of focus? Dr. David Linville and a team of faculty and staff have spent the summer preparing and ultimately submitting our substantive change documents to SACS. I want to thank Sherry Clavier for her tireless work to prepare that material and get it into SACS. It is well done, and I anticipate that it will be well received by SACS. But in addition to preparing that document, they are compiling and assessing every policy at the institution and adjusting those policies to reflect Board of Trustees rather than Tennessee Board of Regents. Because every major policy, from parking policies to student disciplinary policies to tenure and promotion, reference the board. And we need to make revisions to those policies to reflect the new governance paradigm. That work is underway, and it will continue, and you see the areas in which it's ongoing. That committee and the vice presidents are also cataloging the list of services that are provided by the board in order to make decisions around which of those services will continue to procure from the board after the change. Will we purchase banner? Are there elements from a contractual perspective, architectural services, et cetera, where we would like to continue the relationship with the board? The answer to that question is something that we will position to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission in 2017. In 2017, we will finalize the transfer of authority from the state to the Board of Trustees when the governor seats the board in the spring. I anticipate that the first meeting of the Board of Trustees will be in April, and it's at that meeting that we'll transfer policies, we'll approve tenure and promotion, and we'll begin a conversation around budgeting, et cetera. This is going to be a year of significant change at the campus, and ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to do everything perfectly. We will make mistakes. I know that there are many in the room who would like for us to move aggressively on restructuring some processes across the campus. We'll begin that work, and I'll talk some about that in a later slide, but it's not physically possible to get everything done between now and April. But I also want to stress that the number one charge for the university is our growth agenda. We can spend hours and weeks and months rewriting policies, improving processes, et cetera, but unless we grow, our budget is not going to be in the position that it needs to be next fall. So will we give this all the attention that it deserves? Yes, but we cannot allow for this to distract our attention from the growth agenda, because without growth, we will not be able to move the needle with respect to faculty and staff salaries. In terms of major updates on construction, here are the projects. Martin Center for the Arts, $52 million facility. It'll open in the spring of 2019. To date, we have raised $21 million from external sources for this project. I know a lot of people across the state of Tennessee thought it would be impossible for ETSU to raise its match. We're less than $1 million away from raising the total match, but through a partnership with Johnson City, Washington County, et cetera, not only will we raise the match, we're going to build a building that is larger than the original approved scope by the Tennessee Board of Regents, and a building that will be a lasting home for the arts at our institution. To our faculty in theater, to our faculty in music, to our faculty in other arts disciplines across campus, I regret that this project has taken as long as it has. We're behind schedule. If we had stayed with the original structure to build this building on campus, out by Governors and Centennial, there would already be steel coming out of the ground. But it would be steel coming out of the ground to house a facility with about a 650-seat main hall, a hall that's too small the moment we open the doors. By taking a little bit longer, we will build a building that will last for generations, and build a building that we'll be proud of, the community will be proud of, and that will be transformative. Football stadium, $22 million project funded through private resources and student fees. It'll open next fall. D.P. Culp University Center, $41 million project funded through designated student fees. Over the course of the next 4 years, this building will undergo a transformation. You can get a glimpse of what that transformation will hold if you visit the marketplace. If you've not had the opportunity to go to the marketplace, I would encourage you to have lunch there at some point this week. My family and I had dinner there on Friday night, and it was outstanding. I had sushi for dinner on Friday night at the marketplace. That is a glimpse of what will come in this building as we enhance meeting space, gathering space, common space, and we transform food service on our campus. If we're going to be a residential destination institution, we have to expand the size of this building. Once again, I indulge your patience. It's as if we're renovating the kitchen while we're living in the house. No pun intended, but that's what we're going to do. So for the next 4 years, there will be major renovations in this building while we're continuing to utilize it. And I thank you for your patience as that process unfolds. And I want to commend Dr. Joe Sherlin for his leadership. Center for Interprofessional Health, academic building, VA campus. It will be a state-of-the-art facility for instruction and research. It will be the new SIM center for medicine, pharmacy, nursing, physical therapy. This will help to transform the Quillen campus and bring together the campus in a way that does not exist now, because this facility will have food service. Once again, instructional space. So instructional space in the facility for the arts, the Martin Center, instructional space here. Service space, the day center. $1 million HRSA grant thanks to the leadership of Dr. Wilsey Bishop, Dr. Wendy Nearing, and all the faculty in the College of Nursing. This facility allows us to continue our mission tradition of investments in the community. We are the healthcare safety net of the region, as I referenced, and this facility will allow us to expand our services to the homeless population in downtown Johnson City and across the Tri-Cities. Data center, as a side note, if there's a tornado, everybody run to the data center because this is the most solid building on campus. If you've watched it go up, solid block, brick on the outside of the block, metal roof. Why? Because it is the home of all data and IT for the campus. Data and IT that now exists in the basement of Lucille Clement. The facility will be completed this December, and Dr. King and her staff will begin the transition of all of our IT network and infrastructure to the building in the spring. And then finally, once again, instructional space. We're the #1 project on the Tennessee Board of Regents capital list, and I anticipate that by this time next year, I'll be updating you on the construction time frame for Lamb Hall. So back to great colleges to work for. One of the weaknesses identified by you in that survey was that we as an institution need better instructional facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, here are 3 brand new buildings or a major renovation, all of whom are instructional in their purpose. I would also contend that the renovations being made to this building align with the academic heart of the institution because we provide rich student support services here through the ARC and through the Counseling Center. So our strategic planning process. Last year at the State of the University Address, I stated we would launch the planning process, outline timeframes, etc. Here's the work that we've done since then. I want to commend the members of the IUC who are in the audience for the shared governance leadership that they've provided to the campus. The Interim University Council has provided a venue for faculty, staff, students to come together and make major decisions about the future of the university. A recommendation that came from Dr. Wally Dixon was to create opportunities for enhanced feedback and input, going back to moving the needle on that communication theme from great colleges to work for. We've initiated a 30-day public comment and feedback process for any significant policy change across campus. You have the opportunity to make your voices heard. So if someone were to say, well, there's a new change in creative services and graphic design across campus, I didn't hear about it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's on you because the IUC has placed everything on the web. We've publicized it. We've sent emails. You now have a venue to provide comment and feedback to major policy initiatives. Take the time to invest in the university. If you want to change direction, change policy, and make your voices heard, speak up. And that 30-day feedback process provides the opportunity for everyone to do so. And on the graphic design policy that went out a month ago, I guarantee you it will look different when it comes back before the IUC because of the feedback that we received through that process. But the work of the strategic plan has not existed in isolation. You see in the center of the chart, budget redesign efforts, administrative services review, instructional strategic plan that Dr. Bach has led, academic portfolio review under the leadership of Dr. Virginia Foley, the research strategic plan that Dr. Rob Pack led, and then our community service and engagement task force. Our strategic plan has been informed by the work of all of these respective committees. Our strategic plan is also being informed by the feedback that you have provided. You see at the bottom of the slide, Dr. Hoff held town hall meetings last week, and you see the work that will occur throughout the fall. Our goal is to link the strategic plan with the budget, to finalize the strategic plan this fall, and then to present that strategic plan to the Board of Trustees during their orientation session. This will be our strategic plan. It will be complete when we present it to the Board of Trustees, and it will link to our budget model. In terms of what comes next is the transition of that plan into a new governing body for the university. I've described it here as the University Council. That University Council will take the place of the IUC upon conclusion of the strategic plan. The Interim University Council was charged to lead the university through the planning process. Once that planning process is complete, the University Council will be the entity that assesses progress towards planning goals and ensures that budgets and plans are linked. And the work of this new shared governance entity will be done in conjunction with our Board of Trustees. This is a slide from Dr. Hoff, but I think it's powerful because it conveys where we have been in terms of an institution with respect to strategic planning. Individual units had their own strategic plans. They kind of hung in constellation with one another, but they were not unified in terms of theme and direction. The effort that he and Dr. Dixon have led has taken department plans, college plans, thematic plans, and brought them together into a unified strategic plan through 2015 to 25. Dr. Hoff and his team led a series of SWOT reviews across the campus. They held focus groups, and they sent a broad public survey out to the campus. 946 people responded. The themes here are very similar to the themes in great colleges to work for. Our strengths are in our educational core. our weaknesses, our resources, and communication. What you have is triangulation of data. The opportunities from the SWOT are similar to the opportunities that emerged through public opinion work done by the Committee for 125, through NESE, through Great Colleges to Work For in 3 iterations, and then this survey. So the data triangulate. Strong academic core, outstanding focus on people, an institution that feels like a family. We know who we are. We know our strengths. We know our weaknesses. It's now time to get to work. And that's what the strategic plan will outline, the path of action for the institution, and that path will be, for the first time, directly aligned to our strategic budget. Here are the pillars of the strategic plan. These are the pillars of the plan that is being presented to campus for feedback and input, providing the best possible student experience inside and outside of the classroom, ensuring the diversity and inclusion of people and ideas, empowering our employees, expanding our foundation for scholarly research, and leading the region forward through community engagement and service. These are the pillars upon which the plan and the university, which the plan will be built and the university will move forward. There's one major change to our vision statement being proposed by this committee, and you see it here. Right now, our vision statement is to be the best regional university in the nation. I don't quite know what best is, and I think we've outgrown being a regional university. We're a national research institution with a national footprint and a national impact, and you see that reflected in a revised vision statement. Once again, all of this will go out for comment and feedback. This is not ground in stone. You will have the opportunity over the next couple of months to make your voices heard about the relevancies of these areas of emphasis, as well as the proposed revision to the vision statement. And here are the roll-up goals. So when you take the plan and you put it down to a series of metrics by which will be assessed, these are the roll-up goals for the strategic plan. This is what the university would look like in 2025 if we hit all of our benchmarks. I know that there have been questions in the planning sessions around 18,000 students. I've had individuals ask questions to me, Dr. Noland, where did the 18,000 students come from? What's magic about that number? The first is that's about the average size of our peer institutions. Once again, referring to my comments around revenue. If we want to reach outcome variables reflected by our peers, then I would posit we need to grow our enrollment to a level comparable to those peers. But there's something more concrete and tangible here. In order for the university to hit the Drive to 55 goals that have been prescribed by the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, number of degrees produced, that's the enrollment that we must reach in order to hit the goals that THEC has set for us. So 18,000 students, 3,500 out-of-state students, and you can see through here, 60% graduation rate. Start at ETSU, finish at ETSU, that's a 20% lift. 85% retention rate, that's a 14% lift. HEED status for institutional diversity. These numbers are stretch goals. I anticipate that as we move through the next couple of months, some of these numbers may change because it may not be possible to stretch that far. When I was little, I had a Stretch Armstrong doll. My brother was a lot stronger than I was. He was able to stretch it so far, he pulled the arm off. I do not want to stretch this institution so far that we cause harm. So these are stretch goals. We may need to revise some of the benchmarks, but that 18,000 number, from my perspective, is not something we can adjust. If we want to move faculty and staff salaries, and if we're going to hit the goals that THEC has established for us, that 18,000 number is the reality in 2025. That's on campus, online, off campus. I mentioned the Sevierville Center. That's not 18,000 students in Johnson City. That's 18,000 students across the diverse instructional sites offered by our faculty and staff. So the initiatives for this year, those were long-term goals. 2025, initiatives for this year. Prioritize focused on the growth agenda. We must reverse our enrollment trends. Dr. Hoff's enrollment projections indicate that unless we do something disruptive, enrollment next fall will be down 200 students over where it is this fall, because the number of freshmen are down, the number of sophomores are down, students are taking more courses, 15 to finish is working, they're graduating at a quicker clip than they did before, so we must grow our enrollment. I can't say it enough. We must grow our enrollment, and every single one of us owns that. Every single one of us bears a responsibility to the growth agenda, because this isn't new students, it's retention and persistence as well. Completion of the strategic planning and budgeting process. We will complete the strategic plan and we will develop a strategic budget model that aligns with it. Dr. Calhoun's committee will go out across the campus here over the course of the next couple of months and provide the final draft of their report and recommendations for the implementation of that process. Board of Trustees in focus, I've referenced that. I anticipate that the board members will be named this week, if not next, because we must submit their background materials to SACS as part of the substantive change documentation. The faculty member has been selected, and I congratulate our ornithologist and look forward to working with them. The Mountain States-Wellmont merger, the merger application has been deemed complete by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it also been deemed complete by the state of Tennessee. We are now on the clock, and I recognize that the FTC on Friday submitted material that is attempting to block the merger, but I do anticipate that the merger will move forward, and that will be a dominant theme and initiative for this year. Diversity Task Force. Today I'm pleased to announce the creation of a Diversity Task Force that will focus on reviewing institutional efforts to support and promote diversity and inclusion on our campus, and that will develop recommendations for structure, staffing, benchmarks, and metrics to support this initiative. It will be co-chaired by Ms. Mary Jordan and Dr. Chris Dula, and this is something that has been in the works for about a year. There have been major research efforts focused on the campus climate, assessing campus climate for students of color, for LGBT students across our campus. At the IUC this past summer, we had a presentation of survey data related to the perceptions of LGBT populations across campus and the extent to which they felt this was a welcoming campus, a safe campus, and a campus that felt like home. Mary Jordan has led efforts across the campus for the past 3 years to bring outside advisors to help us develop a strategic plan. That has informed the planning process. But the events of last week signify the importance of this initiative, and I look forward to working with Dr. Dula and with Mary Jordan as we develop a true strategic diversity plan and tie resources to that plan. I also will announce at IUC in November. I'm not at a position to announce the membership or the chair today because there are a couple elements that I need to work through with senior staff, but we will create a group focused on process. We must streamline the university for the experience of our students, but also for the experience of our faculty and our staff. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and complained about bureaucratic process X or Y or Z. And I also cannot tell you how many times students have come to me and said, Dr. Noland, why does it have to be this hard? Ladies and gentlemen, we're a major comprehensive institution. We have 2,600 faculty and staff, 14,000 students. Many of our processes were built for an era prior to the internet, and as we transition to the Board of Trustees, this is a natural opportunity to look at how we run our operations, how we can streamline our operations, and make them more efficient. You'll see areas of emphasis in financial aid. You'll also see areas of emphasis related to some admissions venues and the way in which students have the opportunity to apply to our university, hopefully transitioning from a paper format to an electronic format in the very near future. And then finally on communication. I'll continue to take a megaphone and stand in the parking lot if anyone wants to come listen, but all kidding aside, we as a university must continue to focus on communication. We've launched new initiatives. I want to thank Joe Smith and his staff for the work that they've done with the Blue and Gold Digest. I've adjusted the notepads from a rambling diatribe to 90 seconds. We are trying to improve the manner in which we communicate, but once again, this is all of us. All of us have a responsibility to communicate both strengths, concerns, opportunities, and weaknesses. The deans must communicate with chairs, chairs must communicate with faculty, and everyone has the opportunity for a symbiotic feedback loop. I'm hopeful that the next time we give the Great Colleges to Workforce survey, that 54 number will improve to well above 60, because we're doing all the things that a university should do to create processes. Now we just have to ensure that those processes are working properly. And I want to close here, but I want to close by reading the words penned by one of our students who really, I think, drives home the importance of our mission. This is President Sidney Gilbreth, the first president of East Tennessee State University. President Gilbreth, at the installation ceremonies for our institution in 1911, declared that the purposes of our university were to support the goal of regional services, scholarship, the study of education, and the knowledge and condition of the needs of our state. At that ceremony on October 10th, 1911, for the first time the Tri-Star flag flew in the history of the state of Tennessee. It didn't fly first in Nashville or Knoxville or Chattanooga. It flew first here. That star and those three flags represent the three grand divisions of the state. But from my perspective, they represent the three elements of post-secondary education: teaching, research, and service. And the circle that ties it all together for East Tennessee is East Tennessee State University. Since President Gilbert uttered the words, "The purpose of this institution is to make a difference in the lives of the people of the region," we have been focused on that mission. And you see that mission in the following story. From the words of Mariah Montgomery, a TRIO student, a student who first interacted with our university as a high school student. Dr. Ronnie Gross and his staff do outstanding work in TRIO. We have the full complement of TRIO programs, recognized nationally as a leader. When I go to Access conferences, when I was in the state of West Virginia and I announced that I was coming to ETSU, they said, "Well, you've got Michael Jordan of Access programs on your campus." Dr. Gross and his staff have made a difference in the lives of the people of our region, and I want to read how they've done that work through the words of one of our students, Mariah Montgomery. Mariah wrote as follows: "I remember quite clearly how terrifying my first week of college was. I felt alone and incredibly overwhelmed at the prospect of choosing the path that I would take with my life. Luckily, perhaps by chance or a greater power, I was hired at Student Support Services as both an office worker through my APS scholarship and a peer mentor and tutor. Here I was welcomed into a family full of spirit and laughter, and quite ironically, they have been the greatest support here at ETSU. I have seen our program on both sides of the table, as a student and as a tutor, and through these roles, I've learned about the success of our university from a perspective that I never previously could have imagined. In my time in our program, I've come to the conclusion that our connection with students drives us to go farther than we thought possible. It helps guide us, support us, and forms us into successful people, both personally and professionally. Our tutors are not merely teachers, but they are mentors and friends to our students and one another. They lift each other up, remind one another of our goals, and provide the strength that can only be found through community. I'm proud of how a group of individuals are learning how to work together and not just be academically successful, but also successful in life. And for this, I will always be grateful. I have the great privilege to hear the stories of our students on a daily basis. And I want to close by spotlighting the activities of our students last week. Last week had the opportunity to present a very different outcome for this university than it did. But across the nation, there was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education today commending the university for the manner in which we responded to the incident of last week. But ladies and gentlemen, we were not the ones who responded. The individuals who responded were our students. Our students acted with bravery, our students acted with poise, and our students acted with dignity in the face of hatred. If I was an 18 or 19-year-old, I doubt I would have exemplified the values that our undergraduate students did last week. To our undergraduate students and to the faculty who were out in Borchuk Plaza the next day and the day after that and the days to come, thank you for supporting our students, but thank you for what you've done in your classroom to instill those values. Those values that our students demonstrated, many were learned at home, but they were reinforced here in your classroom. They were reinforced by the experiences that our students have with you in the classroom and support settings and mentoring settings. They were reinforced by the words of Mariah that I just read. Last week could have gone very differently at this institution than it did. But why were we written about positively in the Chronicle today? Because of the values that define this institution. People come first and they're treated with dignity and respect. This next year and the years to come will be an interesting period in the history of the university. Enrollment dynamics will change. Budget dynamics will change. The Board of Trustees will change. But if we keep the values in front of us and those values never change, I'm confident that we will continue to grow and prosper as an institution. So thank you for your patience with me. Thank you for your support of our university. And it would now be my pleasure to address questions. Any questions? Yes.
Thanks for having this moment. Thank you for the work that you did for the university last week. We appreciate it. Could you please talk a little bit about the faculty profile, especially you see the status of the faculty that students interact with as important in retention? And can you say anything to those of us who are worried by seeing tenure track lines in our department kind of disappear when our friends die or leave or retire and aren't replaced and lecture lines close and things?
Let me address, I think there are two elements of the question. The first is with respect to the role of the faculty in enrollment, student success, retention, graduation, et cetera. None of this will move without the support, the effort, the work, and the investments of our faculty. I'm in the classroom as well, virtually, but I'm teaching 2 classes this fall in conjunction with Dr. Bethany Flora. Teaching is hard work. It's every day working with students, answering questions, helping them unravel puzzles that are placed before them in the classroom. I think our faculty do an outstanding job in their service to our students, and you saw that reflected in the NESE data. I recognize the concerns among faculty with respect to fluctuation of lines by department. I wanted to share some data today that looked at overall faculty lines by department and by college. The fluctuation evidenced in some departments is not consistent across others. It's also not consistent within colleges. So in arts and sciences, for example, there are some departments that have experienced a loss of faculty, other departments that have gained faculty. As a whole, the number of faculty and staff at our university is up over the past 5 years. But it's not consistent across department or colleges. And we will share, Dr. Hoff will share a lot of this as part of the strategic planning work, what that data looks like. But am I concerned about the ability of our faculty to grow in terms of size and strength and number? Yes. If we can grow our enrollment, we'll be able to increase the number of faculty and staff at the institution. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned about the average salary for the faculty. Does that include the salary for the College of Medicine and College of Pharmacy as well? And if yes, what is the average job to those two colleges?
The data that was included does include salary data for the College of Medicine and the College of Pharmacy. We've spent considerable time examining our peer comparisons with and without data for the College of Medicine and Pharmacy, and the numbers really do not move that much. We're at the tail end of our peers with the College of Medicine and Pharmacy faculty, and we are in a similar position if we were to remove those 2 units from the comparisons. Because if we remove them from our comparisons, then you're also removing them from places like Marshall, et cetera, who have robust health sciences infrastructures. So across the board, we've had a challenge with faculty and staff salaries at this university for decades. Part of it, I think, is reflected in the fact that the funding formula does not recognize the cost of degree production. All degrees are treated equal in the formula, even though we know the cost of production is significantly different for my discipline, political science, than it is for medicine. But long answer to a short question. Short answer to the question is yes. Other questions? Yes.
You mentioned about graduate students, increased students, international students. How many of those were actually graduate students versus undergrad students? And I want to add to that, do we have any plans of moving business or international students on campus to grade for ACCA
I cannot recall the distribution of the 620-some students. Overall, it was 390 at the beginning of the chart. What percentage of those are graduate or undergraduate? It's just the overall increase in international students has been pronounced over the cycle that was provided within the chart. You put a laser focus on one of the many areas of concern that I have and that we have as a campus, and that's the support that we provide for our international students, both in terms of housing, in terms of food service, in terms of counseling, opportunities for community. As those numbers continue to grow, we must ensure that we provide, and I'm going to quote an international student who was at Shelbridge last week. We had a group of SGA leaders over to the house for dinner. We have student groups over about once a month. And there was an international student from Kenya who was describing for me the challenges that she and her colleagues have faced this fall as the economy of her home country has changed. That's created uncertainty for students here. And she said, Dr. Noland, we just want to be treated like any other student. We want the same support, we want advising, we want the same experience that any other student has at ETSU. I couldn't agree with her more, and that's part of the element that you'll see in the planning pillar in the plan related to diversity and inclusion, and it's also part of the work that Dr. Dula and Mary Jordan's committee will embark upon. Yes, sir.
Concerning the governor's plan for outsourcing state employee services, the understanding is still the universities can opt out, right?
That is correct.
There's some concern that because companies are probably going to question have a certain number of, a contract big enough to make it worth their while, that we're going to be pressured not to opt out. Are you experiencing any of that?
I've had the opportunity to meet with both representatives of employee associations as well as members of the governor's staff who have updated us on the progress that they've made towards benchmarking anticipated savings through that proposal. When I compare our units of production to the benchmark unit of production that's contained within their research, we are far more efficient than the outside entity that we are being compared to. The comment that I've made on multiple occasions is that you cannot put a price tag on pride. If you walk across our campus, there's very little trash. Campus is absolutely stunning. I had a chance on Saturday to spend some time with an alum who hadn't been back to campus since he graduated 4 years ago. And he said, Dr. Noland, I just can't believe how beautiful the campus looks. I don't remember it looking this beautiful. It looks the way it does because of the pride that our facilities and grounds crew exemplify in their work. I do not envision any data set that would cause this institution to adopt an outsourcing plan, but we'll continue to track and evaluate the progress just so that we're watching the due diligence that the governor's office is conducting. Other questions? Well, in closing, let me offer the following. My email address, as I say to students, is relatively simple. It's president@etsu.edu. If you have thoughts, concerns, or questions, please send me an email. All the slides will be placed onto the web later today. But what I want to do is close by saying thank you. Thank you for what you do for our university. Thank you for the things that you do in your classrooms. Thank you for the things that you do across this campus on a daily basis to make this a wonderful place to live, work, play, and learn. We had more than 150 parents and students at our house on Saturday, and a father came up to me and said, Dr. Noland, I've got another child who attends Tennessee Tech, and that experience is nothing like the experience my daughter's having here. And he went on to talk about an introductory biology course that this student had with Cerrone Foster. He went on to talk about the adventure ropes course that this student had the opportunity to participate on. I'm afraid of heights. I jumped off the top. You all need to take advantage of that ropes course. It is a wonderful resource. But he went on and on and on about this university. The values of this university were reflected last week. I'm proud of our people. I'm proud of our faculty and staff. And I thank you all for what you have done to make this the best university in the state of Tennessee. Godspeed to every single one of you, and go Bucks.